Good morning and welcome to another edition of the Daily Fix. I am your usual host and presenter, Advocate Tulo Hoyani. So the testimony of Abselum Zungu concluded in the Pretoria High Court yesterday. And I think my own assessment is that Abselum Zungu has been a star witness for the defense. And why am I saying all this? I'm saying all this because it emerged from his examination in chief by Advocate Mnisi and his later re-examination of Abselum Zungu, where everything came out clearly. And what was the upshot of that evidence? The upshot of the testimony of Abselum Zungu came out very clearly in re-examination yesterday, when Advocate Mnisi put a question to Abselum Zungu, that now that in the light of the fact that you have told the court that a statement had been put before this court, allegedly made by yourself, with a signature appended there, which you have disputed, what then do you make of this and what would you like to see happen? Interestingly, it was at that stage that we saw Advocate Baloyi for the prosecution stand up and object. And his objection was to the effect that whatever Abselum Zungu was going to say was irrelevant opinion evidence. In other words, his answer would just be his own opinion and should be disregarded by the court as evidence. But after that, Advocate Mnisi replied and said that no, that is the version of the prosecution, because the prosecution has taken the position that, well, that evidence is irrelevant, but the position that the defense is taking is totally different. Judge Rata, as usual, never made a ruling on the matter, but we can assume that he ruled in Advocate Mnisi's favor, because Advocate Mnisi then continued. And Abselum Zungu's response, typical of this resilience, of the resilience that I've seen in this man, was to the effect that he wants to see the law take its course. That is what his response was. Now, what does it mean when one says the law must take its course? Abselum Zungu there, in simple terms, is saying the person behind the false procurement of his affidavit, the person behind the procurement of that forged signature on Exhibit U should be dealt with legally. Now, who is the person that Abselum Zungu is referring to? Although he did not mention him by name, we all know that this so-called affidavit, which Abselum Zungu has denounced for as many times as one can remember, the person behind the procurement of that false affidavit is none other than Brigadier Gininda. And it would appear that along the way, Gininda had associates in this grand plan to illegally procure an affidavit from Abselum Zungu. it appears that his own son, Constable Zungu, had a role to play in all this. Although he was not involved in the actual formulation of the affidavit and the eventual, appending of that false signature on the affidavit, Constable Zungu has a role to play. Because it was through Constable Zungu that Brigadier Gininda was able to not only get hold of Abselum Zungu, so in a sense, Constable Zungu facilitated it all and made it all possible. So he is complicit in one way or another. So this is where the case stands at the present moment. The matter is postponed to Monday because the defense is now intending to call its next witness that they have not disclosed, possibly for security reasons, but we'll know that witness on Monday. But what has come out of that testimony, just to round up, is that Abselum Zungu is very angry about the fact that, his name was being bandied all over the place and he was not being called. And he told the Pretoria High Court that this is a very serious matter and this could have possibly endangered his life, because people were saying to him, we are hearing of your name being mentioned on TV every single day. Why are you not being called? But of course, we all know the reason why Balui would dare not call Abselum Zungu. Because Zungu would simply say the things that he has told that Pretoria High Court. You see, the original plan of the prosecution was to, and Gininda, was to convince Abselum Zungu to come before the court and come and testify falsely along the lines of that concocted affidavit. So Abselum Zungu disappointed them because he'd have none of that. He was not going to be party to that fraudulent scheme that Brigadier Gininda had. So this is why Abselum Zungu, after hearing his name being bandied all over the place, was surprised why he was not being called to court. It was because it was clear to, Balui and Gininda that he was simply just going to collapse their case if he was to be called. That is why they ended up not calling him. This is why now we find that he is before the Pretoria High Court, because he has been called by the defense. But be that as it may, the truth has come out that both Bongani Ntanzi and Muzisi were arrested on the basis of a false and fraudulently procured affidavit. And in the next edition, like I said, I'll be bringing you continuous analysis of the implications of how going forward, what ought to happen now that it has come out into the open that that affidavit is a fraud. Having said that, let me thank you for watching this video. Let me thank you for all the views and subscriptions that I'm seeing, and have a wonderful, wonderful start to the weekend. Thank you.